So the hackathon, I think, was a huge success. I think I thought it'd be fun to just talk about like some of the projects that actually won, because if people haven't seen the live stream of the hackathon, I think I've been trying to represent some of the hackathon ideas to people, and I think I'm like not representing it as best as I could. So I was going to say, what if we I could hear from each of you your best effort at endorsing one or two of the projects that you saw at the hackathon.
Totally. Sure. And I would say, before we even jump into the projects, I think it's maybe just like nice to set the stage a little bit. The hackathon itself, in my mind, was one of the most fun. I mean, I haven't gone to a ton of hackathons, but probably the most fun hackathon I've ever been to. It was just an incredible group. Like, having, how many people do we have total? Like 40 or so, maybe 50 if you include all the sponsors and whatnot. Of like some of the like smartest, most interesting people, many of whom I knew from Noster, but had never met, IRL. I had a tremendous number of interesting conversations with Steven from Block. Like, that was a highlight to me without even the project.
Big highlight.
But yeah, it was so awesome. It was like we were chatting, and all of a sudden it was like 11:30 on Friday night. Like, wait, where'd the last hour and a half go? We're supposed to leave. Anyway, so the whole vibe of the thing, I would say, was just a massive success and super fun. I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, I think we had about 30 builders.
Yeah.
16 teams formed, and I'd say the people that showed up, they are high quality.
Yeah,
that's what I was happy with. Like it was an open invite. Anyone could apply. So we looked at each person's applications and picked the best ones. But you still don't know. I mean, there were maybe like 8 or 10 people we already knew ahead of time, but a lot of people were new to us. So that's exciting to see new faces. And they all belonged. So it was really, it was an exciting 24 hours.
Which is tricky, I think. If you're coming from like traditional tech, you expect to see like the certain resume with the schools and the companies they worked at and all this stuff. And in Bitcoin, it's not like that, right? Like in Bitcoin, it's like, how do you know if this person's like crazy genius,
proof of work,
mad scientist, which is like very frequently the case, or like, I don't know, the opposite, off the rocker, kind of crazy,
borderline crazy.
But also, what's one thing?
Line, right?
What's one thing we've talked a lot about in this show the last few months?
Diversification of risk,
vibe coding, right? And I think that is a huge change. So we definitely had a lot of developers show up. But we also had people who are not developers, people who had an idea, we had people show up who have a couple months of vibe coding experience, so they're actually like elite vibe coders.
Yeah.
We also had people show up that had never vibe coded and they don't know how to code. So we had the full range, and I think hackathons are going to be completely different moving forward.
Totally.
We'll get into talking about what the winning projects were, but just the fact that they were built and functional within 24 hours is amazing, I think.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those projects.
Yeah, let's talk about our favorites.
What
who
were
wants to kick us off?
Max, you can start.
Okay. Well, so I guess when we introduced Hackathon, there were two kind of broad categories we talked about. The vibe coding with Bitcoin payments using AI. That's awesome. And there were some really cool projects with that. Shout out, I forget, I'm terrible with names. You guys are going to have to help me with this, but there was a student, I believe, that came that, to your point, had never coded or vibe coded, and actually had a pretty cool, sort of financial literacy app built around teaching about Bitcoin. That was inspirational for me. And Billy Joe, that flew out from South Korea, also did like proof of walk, showing you that you could check in at different places. And those were inspirational just because it proved to me like, hey, anyone really can do this. And there's no excuse anymore. If you have an idea, now is the time to build an app, integrate Bitcoin, Lightning payments. They all got them working with native payments. So that was super cool to see. Obviously, you guys are probably going to talk more about Matt's project as well. He was the elite vibe coder, but I love what he was trying to do and, establishing a norm of gratitude and bringing the Google reward system. Oh, that was super cool. So the vibe coding stuff was cool. For me, though, the thing that got me most excited was the sort of second category of projects, which is something we've been discussing on the show for a while, which is the idea of autonomous digital life. So this idea of, can you have AI agents that are able to profitably operate a business, or whatever you want to call it? They're able to take some action in the world that yields more Bitcoin than they spent, and then potentially pay for their own life via GPUs. And so two projects really stuck out to me there. One, which won, of course, both the Audience Choice Award, which was awesome that we had the audience voting, and first prize was Lalu and Jason from Lightning Labs. And they had the Agentic Fuzzing League, which was what I would call a bot that can look for bugs in your code and continue to fix that, doing fuzz testing. And you have to pay using L402 every time you want to do it. That was really cool. And you know, of course, it's Lalu. So every time you see that dude walk in, you're like, yeah. Like, if I were competing, I'd be pretty sad about that. But he's next level. But I would say the project that got me probably most excited overall was the one that got second prize. Unstuck was the name of it, Unstuck AI. And there was a couple of cool things about this project. The gist of the project is, and it also won the most sci-fi, and I think you'll understand why, that it sort of inverts the narrative of, you know, AI is working for humans and has humans working for AI. So this is cool. It could also be freaking horrifying. But the way it works is the AI, let's say a model is trying to, you know, complete a task. And let's say you're asking it to, I don't know, run the mints, like we've talked about, run the cashew mints. And in the process of running the cashew mints, maybe it's registering a domain name, or maybe it's, you know, I don't know, launching a Cloudflare instance, whatever. And it runs into a CAPTCHA. And that CAPTCHA says, you know, prove to me you're not a bot. And of course, they've gotten good enough that the bot cannot prove it's not a bot. So what they had to do is quite genius. They took a screenshot of the CAPTCHA that needed to be completed and then posted it as a job on Nostr, which is open to anyone, and let people, I think, bid on how much they wanted to pay for it. You could also just do direct payments, obviously, in the future. And it's crazy. And then someone could literally solve the CAPTCHA, literally take a screenshot, and they had all that tooling built out, give it back to the AI. The AI pays them. Now the AI goes back to its original task and can get around the human piece. And so there's many, many applications for where that could go. But I don't know. I just thought it was a really creative idea, really clever, pretty terrifying. And the second thing that was cool for me about that was, as we were watching this presentation, because we had 2 rounds of judging. The first round of judging, we kind of had science fair. We went around and talked to people. They showed us the projects. And as we were watching, the guy was just like super impressive. And he was explaining all the stuff he built, and his partner it was a designer, made it look really nice. But I'm like, wait, whoa, this dude is smart as fuck. Like there's no way I don't know who this is. And then it just clicked on me, like his photo I recognized from Nostr. I'm like, oh, you're Dustin from Nostr. This guy I've been following closely from over years. Like, yes, I've been wanting to talk to you. I was like, me too.
Awesome.
And anyway, so that led to us then having a lunch the next day, and we've talked a lot about building decentralized intelligence on Nostr. That's its own rabbit hole, but that was a real treat for me.
Steven and I also had a similar moment where Steven, who you'd mentioned before.
Not me.
Not you, not Steve, but Steven.
Add it in.
We were like hanging, we're jamming. I think we were talking for like an hour, and we were just like flowing with each other's brainstorming, just going back and forth. It was just like, you know, heaven. And then we're like, wait, check out like on Nostr, like follow me on. And we look on Nostr, and it turns out we're each already following each other. I'm like, awesome. Oh, you're that Steve SI or whatever his name was on Nostr. Yeah. So it's fun to bump into a real life Nostr mutual.
Yeah.
Not even know it.
Yeah.
I also loved Unstuck AI for all the reasons you said. I don't have much more to add, but it's again just incredible. Not only the concept, but what they built and got working in 24 hours. I found incredible. I'll talk a little bit about the 3rd place winner, which was Supersonic. A couple of guys, including Austin, who I know watches the show. He actually learned about the hackathon through the show, cool. and came and competed. And I thought what they built was like practical, useful, and they got it working. So Supersonic, it's a podcast player that they used AI to identify ads within the podcast and the time segments of those ads. And then if you want to skip those ads, you can like click the Supersonic button in their app, pay some Bitcoin, and then it would just auto skip those ads. So who doesn't want that value add?
And it only costs like what, 10 Bitcoin or something?
It's something like it was like I think
a very small amount.
10 Bitcoin. Yes, with the B Bitcoin symbol. But yeah, I thought that was and again it was like seemed fully functional. Yeah. So pretty cool what they built. Then 4th place, although I don't think that was disclosed, but the 4th place project was
Alpha.
But one of we had 7 judges, 3 of us and 4 other people, who looked at all 16 projects. It was like a science fair style. I'm telling the audience this, obviously you guys know this, but you know, we did a science fair style where the judges got a 3-minute presentation from each of the 16 projects. We all then independently, scored them across 3 criteria: how complex the project was, the execution quality of the project, and then sort of like swag factor and how on theme it was. Like, I mean, the theme was you got to incorporate Bitcoin somehow. So we did that. We then got down to the top 5. Those are the 5 that presented publicly through a live stream. And then the judges did another round of scoring. So the fourth place project was from Matt Belez, who's a friend of ours. And he's not a programmer, but he's been doing a lot of vibe coding, kind of like DK, the past few months, and just through DK's journey, and we talked about Miles Suter and Matt. Just watching the 3 of you, I've seen how you've leveled up your skills over with each project and using different tool chains, and so what Matt can build is pretty incredible without touching a line of code. The project there's 2 projects we should discuss. One is which is what he submitted and got judged on, and another he tried to get working, couldn't get it working, but I think would be interesting for us to talk about. The one that was judged, it was called Bitcoin High Fives, and it was the inspiration was sort of like give gratitude to people, but he previously worked at Google, so did David and I. One thing Google had was like peer bonus. Like if you wanted to give a bonus to a colleague or peer, it didn't need to be in your reporting chain. You could just be an individual contributor. It didn't matter who you were, just an employee. If you wanted to give a peer bonus to someone else, you could just do that. You just go to the internal website and give a peer bonus. And I think it was material, like $100 or
I think it was like $1,000 something. Yeah.
Or I don't know. I mean, it was like,
I don't know.
It was it was meaningful. It wasn't like,
in early 2000s dollars.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't like. It
but
wasn't
just to
like
clarify, you're having the company pay the peer bonus.
Yeah.
All you have to do is endorse the thing. You don't have to pay the thing.
Yes, but that was a thing.
Yeah.
And it was like
you're probably right. I bet it was $100.
It was more meaningful than like a sticker, right?
Yeah.
So and there's no real tool or mechanism to do that within your Bitcoin teammates, right? Bitcoin teammates, so you're not under one company. It's just Bitcoin colleagues around the world. We work with each other on different projects, or we admire people's work in Bitcoin, and that could be developers or people like influencers or thought leaders or however you're contributing to Bitcoin. So he built Bitcoin High Fives. I forget if it's singular or plural, but where you could very simply enter someone's like Nostr NPub or identity, type a little message about why you're giving them a shout out and what you're appreciative of, and then I think it just hard coded that 21,000 Bitcoin is what you sent to them.
Yeah.
So which is about $21 or today, right?
I think it's like 22 or 23.
Yeah, it might be $22 or $23 now, right? So more meaningful than like the default Nostr clients are like 21 Bitcoin or 42 Bitcoin or something. So this was 1,000x more. So it's more substantial. And then as part of that Nostr post, it had the Bitcoin payment code in the post. So if other people saw it and wanted to also pile in, they just click a button and they could pay as well.
Yeah.
So he vibe coded this whole thing, didn't touch a line of code, got Bitcoin payments working in it. I thought it was like a really cool concept, end to end, and it's also live. So I'm gonna start using.
Do you know what is the URL? Does he have it deployed to something, or it's on Replit, or
he does have it deployed?
It was something with high fives.
We'll have to include in the show notes or in tweet. We'll tweet it out what the URL is.
ifiv.es.
It looks nice, and one thing I want to pause and mention on this as well. So first of all, he did a great job in that. It was like I like this idea of normalizing sending more value. Something we'll talk more about with the Nostr network. Obviously, Nostr is actually I think this is very meaningful. Just crossed 5 million payments, which makes it, at least by payment volume, the largest economy for Bitcoin in the world. But most of those payments,
that's 5 million unit payments,
5 million unique payments. So zaps, basically.
Yeah.
And that's cool. But most of those payments are like, very small, like 21 Bitcoin or 42 Bitcoin. Peer pressure, huh? Sats Bitcoin, whatever you want. But anyways, the point is, I really like this idea of normalizing, like, okay, this can be used for larger payments. Well, that's cool. But the bigger thing I would love to hear about, and I don't know how much I want to, go into detail on this now, but my understanding is that prior to this and vibe coding, Matt was obviously very into Bitcoin, was not as much of a Nostr guy, but he built this whole thing around Nostr. So that was super cool for me to see.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and to be more explicit, he's been pretty skeptical and a critic of Nostr for 2 years now. And I think he's largely viewed it through the lens of like a Twitter clone,
social media,
and like, oh, there's no way it will overcome the network effects of Twitter. And
we all agree.
I think we all agree with that. But now he looked at it through a developer lens. He really liked it as a developer. So he's still not, I don't think he's convinced yet of like what the consumer success looks like, but at least, you know, you got it one step at a time, right? He really got one over from the developer experience.